Oh, I'm sorry. Welcome and announcements. Got a little confused. We're doing something a little bit different today. I forgot. Welcome everyone to the Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende. Bienvenidos todos al servicio dominical de los Unitarios Universalistas de San Miguel de Allende. We're working on it. We're located on the lands of the Chichimeca, Otomi, and Nahua peoples and are making community by Zoom across Mexico, Canada, and the USA. Nos encontramos en los pueblos de tierra Chichimeca, Otomi, y Nahua. Hacemos comunidad a través de Zoom en todo México, Estados Unidos, y Canadá. We are glad to be here together today. Estamos contentos de estar aquí juntos hoy. This is a place where we can bring our whole selves and be accepted as we are with love and friendship. Este es un lugar donde podemos traer todo nuestro ser y ser aceptados tal como somos con amor y amistad. My name is Ann Kuffner, and I will be the service leader here today. Mi nombre es Ana Kuffner y seré la líder de servicio hoy. We are delighted to welcome Dr. Rosita Arvigo. Estamos encantados de que la doctora Rosita Arvigo está con nosotros hoy. Before we move into our worship time, we would like to share a few announcements. Antes de pasar a nuestro tiempo de adoración, nos gustaría compartir algunos anuncios. Also, in case you were wondering, today the opening music will be after the announcements. I just forgot. Okay, so our speaker today, Dr. Rosita Arvigo, will be leading a workshop at Via Organica on October 18th at 10 a.m. For those who would like to learn more about the healing properties of local plants, you can contact Via Organica for more info on how to sign up. I'd like to remind everyone that our fundraiser event and auction will be held on November 12th. Tickets are now for sale at the information table, and you can buy them after the service, and it's going to be quite an event. Broadway star Craig Rubano will be singing at the event, and there's going to be other wonderful things, many wonderful things to bid on. We have 100 tickets in total, and they're 600 pesos each, and that includes entrance, champagne, appetizers, desserts, entertainment, and the auctions. It's a pretty good deal. But for the auction, we still do need more donations. So if you have anything you can donate, go through your closets or your cabinets, and if there's something nice that you haven't used in a long time, please consider donating it. Okay, we'd also like to remind you that UUFSMA posts on our Facebook page and our Instagram account, and we'd really appreciate it if you would follow us on the Facebook page and Instagram and comment, especially if you like something, and share the posts that you enjoy. After the service, those on Zoom are invited to stay connected and visit with others in the main room for discussion. And if you are visiting, please type in your name and how you heard of us in the chat box so that we can greet you personally later. Those of you who are with us at the Aldea can join us for coffee and cookies afterwards, and you can take your coffee and check out the welcome table right over there. It has lots of information, opportunities, as well as the fundraiser tickets. Also, you are invited to come and bring your friends to our Thursday lunch and games event in San Miguel, and to Tom's, Reverend Rosiella's coffee hour on Zoom. You can check your order of service for that information. Okay, I think we have a few visitors here today. Can you stand if you don't mind so we can recognize you and welcome you afterwards? No visitors? I thought I saw a few. Okay. Thank you. Okay, we do record our Sunday in-person services, and you can find a link to these on our website at UUFSMA.org, and they're also on YouTube, the videos on YouTube about a week later. And while on the website, you can check out our events sponsored by the fellowship and information on how to become a member. Now we'll proceed to an unusual opening music video. I hope you're all feeling as relaxed as I feel after each time I've watched this enchanting video. We picked it because the scene and the Maya music really set the mood for the incredible journey our guest speaker will share with us today. Although this video was filmed at gorgeous Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, many indigenous Maya live in the estados of Mexico, especially in Chiapas and the Yucatan. I am so pleased that Dr. Rosita Arvigo has agreed to share the amazing story of her years studying with and assisting the Maya Shaman Don Elijio Panti. This is a very personal service for me. I first read Rosita's engaging book, Sastun, about her experiences with Don Elijio when my husband and I lived in Belize. By the way, I highly recommend this book, Sastun, which is available on Amazon if you haven't already read it. Rosita studied with Don Elijio in the inland jungles of Belize near the Guatemalan border. Many Maya live in that area, and traditional healing is still practiced there. Rosita is a Naprapathic physician, herbalist, international lecturer, and author. She began her career in Chicago, but in the 1970s, she and her husband, Dr. Greg Shropshire, emigrated to Guerrero, Mexico, in the Sierra de Madre del Sur mountains. While living there, she was exposed to the ancient arts of Aztec healing. She later moved to the Cayo region of Belize, near the Guatemalan border. It was there that Rosita and her husband founded the Chel Tropical Research Centre in Belize, an organization dedicated to the preservation, education, and study of medicinal plants of the rainforest. With Dr. Michael Balick of the New York Botanical Gardens, they founded the Belize Ethnobotany project to record and archive uses of medicinal plants in Belize. More than 15 years ago, my husband Mike and I visited the Rainforest Medicinal Trail that Rosita and Greg founded. That is where I first learned about the healing properties of rainforest plants as used by the Maya healers. Dr. Arvigo is now retired, well, sort of, but she continues to train teachers and practitioners in Maya spiritual healing and abdominal therapy. She has written 11 books. I brought 2 of her books that I own about the medicinal properties of plants with me today. One of those books is Medicinal Plants Used in Northern Guanajuato. For those who are interested, you can take a peek at them after the service. All of her books are available on Amazon. We now light this chalice with the understanding that we, as Unitarians, respect the interdependent web of life. As such, we can appreciate the innate knowledge that Indigenous people have passed on one to another over eons, ultimately benefiting all of us. We also recognize and appreciate that this earth's many plants and herbs provide us with sustenance and medicine to heal our brethren, whether human or animals. Now, let's join our voices together in song, hymn number 207, Earth Was Given as a Garden. I invite you to rise in body and spirit, if willing and able. Please remain standing for the covenant. Words will appear on the screen. invite you all to join together in reciting this fellowship's unique covenant. This is our promise that we aspire to and how to be in relation to each other and the larger world. First, we'll read it in English, and then Sophia will read it in Spanish. We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our relationships, and seek values that benefit our lives and the lives of others.
Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
Please be seated. Good morning. I'm the Reverend Tom Rossiello, the minister of this fellowship, and this fellowship strives to always be a caring community. We want you to know, whether you're with us on Zoom or here in person at the Aldair, we are here for you, especially in difficult times. If you need pastoral care or some help from our care team, please contact me or the care team. The information on how to do that is on our website, UUFSMA.org. We now enter into a sacred time in our service when we share significant joys, sorrows, and concerns that our members and friends are experiencing with the community. If you have a joy, sorrow, or concern that you'd like to have shared in an upcoming service, you can email it to me, or if you will be at the service, you can write it on an index card, as some of you did coming in this morning. Also, if you're with us via Zoom this morning, which many of you are, you can share it by typing it into the chat now. As we share each joy, sorrow, or concern, we light a candle, acknowledging that that person or that prayer or that thought is held in all of our hearts this morning. As it's written in the Talmud, when we share a joy, happiness is doubled. When we share a sorrow, the pain is cut in half. May that be so for our community. It's a joy, as many of you have noted, that many of our seasonal folks are beginning to return to San Miguel, and soon more will. And it's also a joy that many of them stay connected all year with us via Zoom. At the same time, many of our folks are traveling this fall, and we wish them a safe journey. Our next candle we light in memory of Susan O'Neill, who many of you knew through Rotary or other activities in the community, who passed away suddenly this past week. Susan gave a great deal to this community and will be greatly missed. As we light a candle of remembrance, this is a remembrance and a reminder. This memorial service for Maya Williams will be this Wednesday, October 9th at 2 p.m. here at the Aldair. We hope you all who knew Maya will be able to be there and celebrate her life and support Wyman. Ann Gaia lights our next candle of gratitude for that her sister Mary is home recovering from a mastectomy for her second breast cancer, and her family is now hoping for good news from pathology to determine future treatment. Cynthia Sterling has a joy that her children in Asheville, North Carolina, survived Hurricane Helene. We light a candle again for our own Linda Raven, who we call Raven. Raven's second heart surgery is on this coming Tuesday, October 8th in California. Another bionic device will be placed in her heart area. It's a nickel titanium Watchman. She's progressing well, although not unexpectedly tired. She asks that everyone send good energy on the 8th. She's already making plans for the help she'll need when she returns to San Miguel the end of October. Light a candle for all those in this community who are observing the Jewish high holidays this week and next. May the Rosh Hashanah blessing of the new year and the Yom Kippur path to forgiveness be a guide to us all. We light a candle for all those in our community who are suffering from mental challenges and physical illness. Diego, we have some. Okay. We have some on Zoom. Mark Johannes Meyer continues to have a deepening wound that is healing incrementally. Susan Nuybeck is concerned for friends in Florida going through another hurricane. A candle of sorrow for the sudden loss of Deborah Jean Sullivan, who many folks in town knew and appreciated. I think that's all of them. Did I get them all, Diego? Yeah. Thank you. Our concerns are not limited to just our own community. Once again this week, we light our blue candle for all those who have died or lost loved ones or whose lives have been upended by the unjust and unprovoked war in Ukraine. We light our other large candle for all those affected by the escalating wars in the Middle East. We hold all those who are living under constant threat of violence, those who are suffering as a result of this war and the lack of humanitarian aid, especially the children. We fervently pray for a ceasefire and the release of all hostages, and the medical help, food, clean water, and medical care will be allowed to reach those who are in such dire need. We pray that the cycle of attack and counterattack will cease, and that some path to a peace that recognizes the rights and equal worth and dignity of all people will emerge. Our final candle is for all the joys, sorrows, and concerns held deep in our hearts, but which remain unspoken this morning. We hold all these joys, sorrows, and concerns in our hearts. May we resolve to honestly face our own challenges, to share in the love and do our part in growing and strengthening this community, to stand for justice with the oppressed, to support, comfort, and assist those who are experiencing difficult times. And now, if you wish to come forward and silently light a candle, perhaps one of gratitude for a blessing, one of remembrance or concern for a person, one of concern for the community or the world, perhaps a candle for some hope you are holding in your heart, you may do so now.
Now we have two short readings, quotes really, before Dr. Arvigo starts. The first is by Dr. Rosita Arvigo. It is folly to ignore the sacred in life or in medicine. Skirting the spiritual has had a shattering effect on every dimension of contemporary existence. And this one is from Don Elijio Panti. I love this one. If you don't say the prayer of faith and thanksgiving to the spirit of a plant before you take it from the earth, the spirit of the plant will not follow you home to do the healing. Now, Dr. Arvigo.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, everybody, for this invitation to share with you today a very special experience that I had in a 13-year apprenticeship. Do we have the slides? With a Maya Shaman, Don Elijio Panti. Here you see the little hut that Don Elijio lived in a small village of San Antonio in Belize. This was a village of Mexican and Guatemalan Mayans. The Mexicans left Mexico in Yucatan because of the Guerra de las Castas around 1910. So we had a mix of Guatemalan and Mexican, and together they all spoke Guatemalan Maya and Mexican Maya. Don Elijio was a Guatemalan Maya who was born in the Petén. Next slide. When I came to Belize in 1982, I was looking for someone to teach me about the medicinal plants of this country where I had decided to spend the rest of my life. I'd always been a herbalist all my life. I had a full clinical practice in naprapathy when I met Don Elijio, and I have always relied on medicinal plants as part of my natural healing practice. It was very, very inconvenient to ship plants from America to Belize. So Don Elijio showed up on my doorstep one day. He came looking for me because as a widowed elder, his wife had passed away a few years earlier, and he said he was unable to sleep. Insomnia was bothering him because he said Don Elijio was a hilarious person. He always talked in the sense that he tried to make you laugh a lot. So he told me the story of how when his wife was alive, they used to sleep like two little kittens in the hammock. And when he'd turn around and his back was exposed to the cold air, she would pull him to her and hug and kiss all night long. And he said, now my wife is gone. When I turn over in my hammock, that blanket falls to the floor, and there's Don Elijio all alone by himself at night in the hammock. So do you have any Flor de Tilo, which is linden flower tea? Happens to be one of my favorites, and I did have it. So I gave him a bag of tea, and he looked at my herbs on the wall in glass jars, and he said, oh, tú tienes un problema. You have a problem. You cannot store herbs in glass jars because here in the tropics, can't you see the water is falling down and they're beginning to mold? And I thought, So I asked him, could I come visit you in your village? Don Elijio was a famous person, first of all. Everyone that I had asked, who could I learn from about medicinal plants, always gave the same answer. You have to go see numero uno, y el mero. Number one, and the very one, is Elijio Panti of San Antonio. So I was trying to find him, and as fate would have it, he found me. So I went to his village the next week, and he didn't remember me. I went 6 weeks again, once a week. He did not remember me. Finally, after about the 7th or the 8th visit, he agreed that I could accompany him into the forest, and that for the next 7 years, as you see here, I was able to assist him collecting his medicinal plants. It was a full year of weekly visits before he agreed. And the day that he agreed, I was able to arrive on his doorstep at 6:30 in the morning. Usually, I had to walk across the river, up a mile through the jungle, and 2 hours on a logging road to get to his village. And I did that gladly and happily. It was a great transition from my life, starting a jungle homestead, walking those 2 hours to have a nice mental time and to prepare myself for being with this great and famous Maya shaman. So I arrive on his doorstep this day, and he gave me the look that was like, she's here again. And I said, well, this is it. I'm never coming back again. If he doesn't agree to teach me, I don't really want to be here bothering this lovely old man. And he said, I don't have time for you today. I've been busy with all my clients all week, and I just don't have time. And I said, well, what are you doing? And he said, I'm going to harvest my corn. I said, well, I'll help you harvest corn. And he said, you're from Chicago. What do you know about harvesting corn? And I said, Don Elijio, I lived in Mexico for 7 years in Guerrero. I know how to harvest corn. Let's go. So he gave me one of those Maya baskets, and I put it around my head, and we get to his cornfield. That is an absolute mountain. Don Elijio was 90 years old at this time. His field was a mountain that he had planted, cultivated, and now was going to carry basket by basket back to his home, and that field of corn fed 15 people for 1 year. So I'm pulling corn cobs and filling my basket, making a pile, and at one time in the morning, we were coming together on the same road, same little path between the cornfields like this, and he looked at my basket, my perspiring face, and he said, are you married? I said, yes, Don Elijio, I'm married, and I have 3 children, and he said, oh. And so finally that day, he said to me on the top of the mountain, he said, ¿Qué es que tú quieres? What is it that you want? And I said, Don Elijio, I only want to learn about medicinal plants. I promise to be a good student, I promise not to be a bother, and I promise to be as much of a help as is humanly possible. And so that day, he agreed to teach me, and it was 13 years that I stayed with him. And what I learned in my time is that during that apprenticeship with Don Elijio, first of all, I think most importantly, I learned about the personality and the character of traditional healers all over the world. Like Don Elijio and many, many others that I've met, they are very spiritual, they are very funny, they never take their life or their work too serious, they care more about themselves, they care more about others than they do themselves. They have a tremendous generosity of spirit. They are willing to give their time to the healing of others. And for Don Elijio, that was 7 days a week, almost 24 hours a day that he was available to his clients. And his particular form of Maya medicine involved medicinal plants that had to be collected with prayer. You see us here collecting this vine that he used a great deal of. It's known as skunk root, or paiche in Maya, and hierba del zorro in Spanish. He used this a great deal for spiritual ailments. Spiritual ailments such as fright and grief, anger, and a certain type of tristeza. There's no word in English that explains tristeza. Tristeza is an emotional, spiritual ailment that you seem to have all your life. Generally, if I ask a person about a PTSD, susto, which is considered a spiritual ailment, they know when it started, they know what caused it. When you ask a person about tristeza, translates as sadness, but it's more than that. They don't know when it started because this spiritual disease often began in utero. Maybe the person was unwanted, or everybody wanted a boy, and the 5th girl appears. And the moment she's born, there's an experience of, oh, and that sadness stays with the person all their life. So Don Elijio, in order to treat these spiritual ailments, and this is what made Don Elijio the shaman. He was a tremendous and great, had a lot of knowledge about medicinal plants. He was a great herbalist. He was a great massage therapist, and he also was a very, very powerful Maya shaman. So these plants, as we take them from the soil, Don Elijio said, must be taken with prayer and thanksgiving. It's a very simple prayer that had to be said, and as you heard in the reading, Don Elijio said if you don't say the prayer of thanksgiving and faith to the plant, the spirit stays in the earth, and without the spirit of the plant, it is impossible to do spiritual healing. You might get chemicals, you might get different types of substances, physical substances, but you cannot do spiritual healing. So the prayer is very simple. I give thanks in the name of the Father, and of the Mother, and of the Holy Spirit. I give thanks to the spirit of this plant, and I have faith with all my heart in your great healing power. Amen. That prayer must be said before plants are taken from the soil. And then we could use them for spiritual healing. In this case, with the skunk root, it would be a tea. Prayer also was essential for treating clients. In the Maya system, pulse is taken. In ancient days, the Maya doctors were always known as pulse doctors. You can find that in the earliest literature of the Spanish friars, that they acknowledged and recognized that these healers were taking the pulse, and they observed them whispering into the pulse. Well, Don Elijio could determine your ailment by feeling your pulse, very much like an acupuncturist, Chinese physician can. I once saw him do an interview with a client, long story of her ailments, and he felt her pulse, and then he said, you didn't tell me you had surgery 3 months ago. That's how astute Don Elijio was. He never went to school, never learned to read or write, but this man was a true genius, an unlettered genius. And when an unlettered genius decides to dedicate an entire lifetime to one discipline, it takes humanity forward by leaps and bounds. Don Elijio said, when he watched me writing down everything it happened in the clinic, all of his clients' ailments and their treatments, and he said, they sent you to school. I said, yeah, they sent me to a lot of school. I sent myself to school. And he said, you'll never learn. I said, what do you mean I'll never learn? He said, that stick and that piece of paper, that makes your mind weak. I never had a stick, and I never had a piece of paper. Pero aquí está lleno. But up here, it's full. So the prayers that Don Elijio say, and this is the part that I thought would be the most appropriate to share with you today, was about how vitally important using prayer was to Don Elijio throughout his entire practice. His teacher was a Mexican traditional healer from Yucatan, and his mother and father were originally from Guatemala. So he was the essence of Maya traditional healing, both from Mexico, Guatemala, and now living in Belize. The prayers that he said were into the pulses, and he tried to teach me probably 18 different pulses. I never really got it. And I was really heartwarmed to talk to a Chinese medical doctor who said that she also never really got all the pulses. What I can recognize is a normal pulse and a pulse of a person with a spiritual ailment. And remember, those spiritual ailments are like fright, grief, anger, sadness. There are many, envy is another one. Envy and jealousy is a very clear spiritual ailment. In order to treat that, the first thing Don Elijio taught me to do is la plática, the talk, the chat. Discuss with the person, and the 3 primary questions are, how long have you been feeling this way? When did it start? And did your symptoms begin at the same time as this event? And if it is like a PTSD or a susto experience, the person always knows and will say, well, it's ever since my mother died. ever since I found my father on the floor, ever since my house burned down. I haven't slept well, I haven't eaten well, and I just don't feel like myself. So the pulse of that person is, it feels like a garbanzo bean jumping. And it's fat and fast. A normal pulse feels like a little lentil going along a string. It's the best way I can describe it. But when a person is suffering from a spiritual ailment, the pulse is very, very clear. So into the pulse are said 9 Maya prayers. I can only say them in Spanish. Every time I try to translate them in English, it feels like a ball of string that's all knotted up. So I can only say the prayers in Spanish, and there are 3 prayers in the right pulse in a whisper. And it's very important that the prayers are said in a whisper, not just thought in your head. I spent years and years trying to determine why was it important that the prayers should be whispered. And it turns out, you want to bring the next slide? What I think is happening after much research is that when you hear the whisper, the incantation, the chanting of these prayers, I believe it goes right to the pineal gland, and it changes every physiological aspect of your body. And saying the prayers, for instance, somebody with a great fright, a recent trauma, that trauma actually exists in the energy field. Yes, they feel it in the heart, they feel it in their thoughts, but it can be seen by those who are able to observe the aura around human beings. They can see a darkness in the auric field. And whispering the prayer, what I imagine is happening is that the prayer has a vibration of light that moves through the auric field, and it pushes away the memory of that event. So prayer, 3 prayers in the right, 3 in the left, and 3 over the forehead. And then spiritual bathing with plants that have been collected with prayer. So for a spiritual bath, Don Elijio would teach me to collect 9 medicinal plants. And in these plants would all be gathered with prayer, put into a bucket filled with water, and we give thanks to the spirit of water as well. That was important. And then the plants are not cooked or boiled. Put them in your hands and just rub them like this until all the plants are dissolved, the water looks greenish, and all the little plant parts are broken up. Put it in the sun for an hour, and then the person is bathed with the splashing experience, and burn copal all around the body as well. So in this way, my interpretation is that Maya spiritual healing brought this more divine light into the person's body, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And there's no psychoanalysis. Don Elijio was not a psychoanalyst. I'm not a shrink, but I have treated thousands of people with these spiritual ailments, and almost everybody gets well. The hardest people to treat on spiritual diseases are those with that tristeza, because they came into life. There was no special event. Those are the ones who tell you, you say, how long you been feeling this way? Oh my, it's just been forever. Well, do you remember any special event that started this experience you have? No, it's just been forever. And then when you find out that they were maybe the 10th child, or you find out that my mother told me she cried through my whole pregnancy because she didn't want another baby. She had just raised 4, they just all gone to school, and she was very upset to be pregnant. So that person undoubtedly comes into life with the feeling of unwelcome, being unwanted, and that's tristeza. So to treat spiritual ailments, it involves the plática. Tell me about it. You want to bring up, this is Don Elijio saying prayers for a newborn baby who has pesar, which is grief, because the mother is pregnant again and she had to wean the baby. And so the baby is crying and won't sleep and throwing up his food. And so Don Elijio said, this is a spiritual disease. And so the baby received 9 prayers, and Don Elijio sent the mother home with a bag full of leaves to make the spiritual bath and bathed the baby for 9 days in a row. And she came back a couple of weeks later, and the baby was completely transformed. Prayer, water, plants, and love. Okay, the next slide, and we're almost done. So there's Don Elijio. You see, he really looks like one of the sculptures on a Maya temple. He was born in Guatemala, came to Belize in a rebozo when he was still just a young baby with his parents. His father was actually a practitioner of evil magic. So his father was run out of Guatemala, and the mother and the baby had to come with the father to old British Honduras at that time. And that would have been in 1897 or 98. Don Elijio was born in 1893 and lived until 1996. Lived an entire life, never learned to read or write, never drove an automobile, never went to a movie, yet he served as one of the most helpful human beings in the history of humanity. So it was my tremendous pleasure to be his apprentice, to carry on his teachings, and especially his love and his humor. So thank you very much.
I think you can all understand why I was excited when Dr. Arvigo agreed to speak. Okay, we're moving into the offering now. One of the purposes of our fellowship is to encourage all who gather here to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take this offering, allowing us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit to assist our self-supporting fellowship with its many ministries. Your offerings will now be collected and gratefully received. Now let's join our voices together in the song Hymn 1074, Turn the World Around. I invite you to rise in body and spirit. Diego is going to play an opening clip so we all get the sense of the music because it moves pretty quickly. And then we'll start from the beginning to sing. I urge you all to inhale quickly after each line because it moves fast.
Wash the mountain, fire make the sunlight turn the world around. Heart is of the river, body is the mountain, spirit is the sunlight, turn the world around. We are of the spirit, truly of the spirit, only can the spirit turn the world around. Whoa, so is life a batiwa, so is life. Whoa, so is life a batiwa.
Okay. All right, that's a pretty energetic piece. Okay, I hope you liked it. Okay, our closing. The closing words are those of Eric Williams, titled, Let Us Bless the Earth. Let us bless the earth and all that is steady and firm. Let us bless the sky and all that is open and filled with light. Let us bless their union, holy and without ceasing. Let us bless their children, the bounty of field and forest, stones, plants, animals, and all living things. May the gifts of the earth and sky strengthen, refresh, nourish, and heal the people of the earth. Amen. Please remain seated for the postlude.